She forgot to log out of her email. I forwarded everything to her mom. You know that moment when your gut tells you something's off but you ignore it hoping you're just being paranoid? Yeah, I had that moment. Too many times. And every time I brushed it off. But the truth? The truth doesn't stay buried forever. Especially not when she forgets to log out of her email on my laptop. It all started on a quiet Thursday evening. She had borrowed my laptop to check her work email, saying hers was acting up again. I didn't think much of it at the time, just nodded, handed it over, and went to make us dinner. When I came back, she was already shutting the lid, smiling like everything was normal. Too normal. We ate. We talked. She laughed at my terrible jokes. But something about her eyes didn't match her smile. It was like she was performing. Going through the motions. I felt it, but I said nothing. Later that night, after she fell asleep beside me, I opened my laptop to catch up on some late work. That's when I noticed it, her email tab still open in the background. I hovered my mouse over it, hesitated, and clicked. My heart dropped. At first, I saw normal stuff, receipts, newsletters, the kind of boring admin junk everyone gets. But then I noticed a thread pinned to the top titled, "Last night was perfect." My hands went cold. I clicked it. What I read next hit me like a freight train. "I can still feel your hands on me. Can't stop thinking about the way you whispered you wanted me forever." He has no idea. He still thinks I'm stressed from work. Poor guy. I kept reading. Message after message. Photo after photo. None of it was innocent. None of it could be explained away. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me while doing it. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I just sat there, staring at the screen, letting the betrayal soak into my bones. I scrolled through their thread for over an hour. It had been going on for months. Every girls' night, every conference, every late strategy call, a lie. All of it. But what got me wasn't just the affair, it was how cold she was about it. How easily she played both sides. How she wrote about me like I was some naive fool who'd never find out. And maybe I wouldn't have, if she hadn't made one crucial mistake, leaving the account open. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even move. I just sat there watching my whole relationship unravel in Gmail threads. The next morning, I played it cool. Made her coffee, kissed her goodbye, told her to have a great day at work. But inside, I was already planning my next move. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to confront. I didn't even want revenge for me. I wanted her mom to know the truth. Why? Because for years, her mother always spoke to me like I was the best thing that had ever happened to her daughter. She once told me, "If she hurts you, I'll hurt her." I thought it was a joke at the time. Yeah? Now I was about to test that promise. I spent hours organizing the emails. Screenshots, full threads, even some of the pictures. I didn't want to send them out of anger, I wanted them to be undeniable. Unarguable. Final. I drafted a single message. Calm. Factual. No drama. Just the truth. "I'm so sorry you have to see this. I would never involve you if I didn't think it was important. I loved her. But she didn't love me back the same way. Please read everything attached and you'll understand." I attached the files. And hovered my finger over send. But I didn't click. Not yet. Because part of me still hoped, stupidly, that there was some explanation. Some reason for all this. So I waited. And that's when things started to spiral. The next few days were a strange kind of torture. I acted like everything was normal, smiling through conversations that made my skin crawl. She didn't suspect a thing. That was the part that hit the hardest, how easy it was for her to play along, to hug me, kiss me, even make plans for the weekend like she wasn't ripping my heart out piece by piece. Every night, I lay awake next to her, staring at the ceiling while her breathing slowed into the rhythm of sleep, wondering how many lies she had told me that I'd never even noticed. I started to see our entire relationship differently, like someone had pulled back the curtain and revealed just how fake it had all been. Every memory now felt stained. Her laugh sounded rehearsed. Her touch felt like betrayal. And yet I still hadn't sent the email. I kept going back and forth, wondering if maybe it was too far. Maybe I should just leave. Walk away. Cut ties and disappear. But then I'd remember those messages. I'd remember how she called me the roommate who pays the bills to the guy she was sneaking around with. How she said I was too soft to ever stand up for myself. That's when something inside me hardened. I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the lies, the manipulation, the absolute disregard for someone who loved her without condition. I wasn't going to scream or fight. I was going to let her actions speak for themselves. One night, while she was in the shower, I logged back into the email. She still hadn't noticed it was open on my device. This time, I didn't just read the thread, I downloaded everything. Hundreds of messages. pictures, dates that matched up with excuses she'd given me. I backed it all up on a flash drive, then created a zip file and attached it to the same draft email I'd written days earlier. I included timestamps, subject lines, and even a brief explanation of what each file contained. It was the digital equivalent of lifting a veil. There would be no denying what she'd done. But I didn't stop there. That night, I went to her phone while she slept. I'd watched her unlock it enough times to memorize the code. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but pride had nothing to do with it anymore. I needed answers. I needed confirmation that this wasn't just some emotional fantasy she was chasing, that she had truly, fully chosen someone else over me. And I got it. Their texts were worse than the emails. More explicit. More reckless. She'd sent him photos from our bed. Told him she imagined him every time we were together. She even talked about what life would be like after she ended things with the boring one. That was me. The boring one. I didn't feel rage. I felt empty. Like someone had scooped everything out of me and left a shell behind. But that emptiness, that silence, was what made everything clear. I wasn't going to let this break me. I was going to control the ending. And I knew exactly how. The next day, I made a copy of the email just in case. I saved it in the cloud. Sent a version to a dummy account I created just for this. No matter what happened, the truth would survive. Then I waited for the right moment. I didn't want to send it while she was at work or out with friends. I wanted to see the aftermath. I wanted to be there when the phone rang. When her world cracked open. So I chose Sunday. We were supposed to have brunch with her family that day. Her mother had invited us over. Said she missed us. I smiled when she told me. Said it would be nice to catch up. She even joked about her mom asking us again when we were going to give her grandkids. That one almost made me laugh. Sunday morning arrived. She was in the bathroom doing her makeup, humming to herself like nothing was wrong. I sat at the table, sipping coffee, the laptop open in front of me. The draft was still there. Still waiting. I hovered the mouse over send, took a deep breath, and clicked. It was done. I didn't say anything right away. We got in the car. She kept chatting, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the nuclear bomb I'd just dropped. As we pulled up to the house, her phone buzzed. I glanced at her. She frowned, read the screen, then frowned deeper. Another buzz. Then another. She stared at her phone, frozen. Her lips moved slightly, reading something, eyes darting across the screen. Then she looked at me. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Just stared. Like she wasn't sure what was happening or if it could possibly be real. I didn't break eye contact. Didn't blink. What did you do? She whispered. I didn't answer. The front door opened. Her mom stepped outside, holding the phone in one hand, tears in her eyes, disbelief on her face. The silence between us was unbearable. I can explain, she muttered, her voice cracking. But no explanation was going to fix what she broke. And we both knew it. There was a long, frozen moment where no one moved. Her mother stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to scream or collapse. The phone trembled in her hand and her lips were slightly parted, like she'd just read the last line of a horror story. And maybe she had. My ex, because that's what she was now in my mind, even if the words hadn't been said out loud, didn't even try to get out of the car at first. She just sat there, staring down at her screen as if looking long enough might make the messages disappear. But they didn't. They were still there, with every filthy sentence, every photo, every joke at my expense. And now her mother had seen them too. She finally opened the car door and stepped out slowly, like a kid caught red-handed with no excuse left to give. Her mom didn't move. Didn't speak. She just looked at her daughter with an expression I will never forget, like someone watching a stranger wearing their child's face. It was grief, but not the kind you feel when someone dies. It was the grief of realizing the person you raised, the person you loved and believed in, had made choices so ugly, so selfish that you no longer recognized them. I stayed in the car. I wasn't there for a confrontation. I had already said what needed to be said without saying a word. I watched through the window as my ex slowly walked toward the porch, her voice low, her hands moving as if to explain something. But her mother didn't respond. She turned and walked back inside, letting the door swing half shut behind her. That was the second time that morning I saw her break. The first was silent. This one was louder, final. The door didn't slam, but it didn't need to. She came back to the car with tears already streaking her makeup. Her whole posture had changed. Gone was the confident, casual energy. She looked smaller, broken in a way I had never seen before. And though I should have felt something, vindication, maybe I didn't. Not joy, not triumph. Just quiet. Stillness. I had done what needed to be done, and now I just wanted to be gone. She got in and didn't say anything for a long time. Just sat there, sniffling softly, staring at the dashboard. Then, in a shaky voice, she asked, "Why would you do that?" I turned to her slowly. "Why did you do any of it?" "I made a mistake." "No. You made 100 choices. Over and over. This wasn't a slip. It was who you became." She reached out, maybe to grab my hand, maybe just to plead, but I pulled away. I couldn't stand the thought of her touching me. Not after what I'd read. Not after what I'd seen. She whispered, "You humiliated me." I looked at her and felt the coldest, calmest wave of realization. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry I made her pay the price in a way she couldn't control. That's when I knew I had made the right choice. The only choice. "I didn't humiliate you," I said. "You did that to yourself." I just held up a mirror. She didn't answer after that. I started the car and drove us home in silence. Every few minutes, she'd look at her phone and wince, probably reading new messages from her mother, maybe other family. I could imagine the conversations exploding behind the scenes. I wondered if she was already trying to spin the story, shift the blame, paint me as unstable or vengeful. But it didn't matter. The evidence was bulletproof. Her own words. Her own images. There was no spinning out of it this time. When we got home, she sat on the couch while I began packing my things. She didn't ask where I was going. Didn't offer to help. Just watched me move through the apartment like a ghost. Maybe part of her still thought I'd cool down and come back. That this would blow over like every small argument in the past. But this wasn't an argument. It was a funeral for the love I had for her, the life I thought we were building, the version of her I believed was real. As I packed the last bag, she finally spoke again. "You told her everything?" "No. Just enough. The rest is for you to explain." She nodded slowly, almost as if she respected that. But I didn't care if she did. I wasn't looking for her approval. I was looking for the door. Before I left, I paused. There was one last thing I had to say, and I wasn't going to leave without saying it. I didn't send that email to hurt you. I sent it because someone needed to know who you really are. Someone who raised you. Who deserved honesty. Because I sure as hell never got it. Then I walked out. The air outside felt different. Colder, sharper, but also clean, like I could finally breathe again after being underwater for too long. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't looking back. I didn't check on her. Didn't stalk her social media or wonder who she was texting. I let it all go. Because that version of my life was over and I wasn't going to mourn a lie. But I did get one final message in email, ironically from her mother, 2 days later. "Thank you for telling me the truth. I wish it hadn't come to this, but I'm glad I know now. Take care of yourself. You didn't deserve any of it." She was right. I didn't. It had been 3 weeks since I walked out of that apartment, and not once had I thought about going back. I moved in with an old friend for a while, someone who didn't ask too many questions and just handed me a spare key and a cold beer. At night, I'd lie on the couch with a blanket that didn't quite cover my feet and stare at the ceiling, not because I was in pain anymore, but because I was starting to feel something strange, freedom. It's odd how peace feels foreign after so much noise. I didn't realize how heavy the relationship had become until I stepped out from under it. Every day away from her was like breathing in a little more oxygen, like the fog was finally lifting from my brain and I could see things clearly again. There were moments, brief flashes, where I remembered good times, laughter, holidays, little habits that once made me smile. But even those memories felt tainted now, like photos from a vacation that ended with a crash. The truth was always hiding behind the smile, behind the kiss, behind the "I love you" that no longer meant anything. Meanwhile, the fallout on her end had only gotten worse. A mutual friend called me, said she'd been trying to reach me. Apparently, her mother wasn't speaking to her anymore. Her relationship with her family had crumbled. Her reputation among our shared circle had taken a serious hit. She tried to paint me as bitter, vindictive, unstable. But no one bought it. Because facts don't lie. Screenshots don't lie. Her own words had told the story better than I ever could. She was the author of her downfall. All I did was deliver the manuscript. I didn't respond to her attempts to contact me. Not the texts. Not the missed calls. Not the long email she sent one night at 2:34 a.m., the subject line, "Please just let me explain." There was nothing left to explain. I'd read her truth. Now she had to live in it. I started rebuilding. I joined a gym again, something I hadn't done in years because she always said I didn't need it, that I should be proud of who I was. What she really meant was, don't change, because if you do, you might realize you deserve more than me. I picked up old hobbies, called friends I hadn't seen in months, even years. The more I filled my days with purpose, the more distant the past felt. But the biggest change? I stopped questioning my instincts. That voice inside me, the one that had whispered something's wrong, I'd silenced it for too long. Never again. That voice had been right all along. Then one afternoon I saw her. I was walking through a bookstore downtown, something I used to do on weekends when life felt simple. And there she was, across the aisle, standing near the nonfiction section. She looked up. Our eyes met. Her face went pale. She didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just stood there frozen like a child caught sneaking out after curfew. I gave her a nod, polite, detached, and kept walking. I didn't need to say a word. She wasn't a villain in my story anymore. Just a chapter one had closed. A lesson I had learned. I walked out of the store into the sunlight, and for the first time in months I genuinely smiled. Not the fake kind I used to wear around her. A real one. Because I knew I was finally free. A few days later, her mother reached out again. A short message. Just 4 words. Proud of your strength. That was it. But it hit me harder than I expected. Maybe because, in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. About restoring a bit of honesty in a world that had been dripping with lies. Her mom didn't owe me anything. But that message? It felt like closure. Like someone on the other side of the wreckage saw what happened and understood. Looking back, I'm not angry anymore. Disappointed, yes. Hurt? I was. But now? I'm thankful. Because sometimes betrayal is the brutal push you need to start over. To find out who you really are without the weight of someone else's deception on your back. I didn't just walk away from a cheating partner. I walked back into myself. I found the version of me I thought had disappeared. And he's not going anywhere again. So if you've ever doubted your gut, silence that inner voice for the sake of peace. Don't. Trust it. The truth always finds a way out. Sometimes it slips through the cracks in an email tab left open. And when it does, you have a choice: close the laptop and live in denial, or open your eyes and set yourself free. Thanks for listening to my story. If it hit home, if you've ever been there, or if you're trying to find your way out right now, know that you're not alone. Drop a comment, share your thoughts, or just let someone else know they're not crazy for feeling what they feel. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. More real stories are coming your way.